I think additional housing should go in cities. I think people should live in cities. That's where humans ought to live. It's more convenient and better for them.
That sounds a bit sort of Orwellian, though, that people ought to live in cities, because, you know, there are plenty of people who, for example, called farmers, who work the land and who live on the land, who fear that at the moment their whole business and their whole way of life is being sort of attacked by a government that doesn't think they should really have a right to exist.
Well, by a government that thinks they should pay the same taxes as everybody else. But
well, not quite, no. It's not quite as simple as that,
is it? It is quite as simple as that, Mike. Yes.
It's not. It's about the business of food production. It's about the business that Britain used to have to rely upon, and which, if it's taken away, will not be good for the eco-climate and will not be good for the green agenda that the government have got. And once again, by sticking with it and by being deliberately kind of obstinate and saying we're not changing our minds, they're sort of showing themselves to be doing it for reasons other than commonsensical ones.
Well, unfortunately, again, I'm going to agree with you, Mike, because
it's not going well.
It's not going at all well. I've said that. I mean, actually, I think the government is going to change policy. I mean, I think.
Do you?
Well, the NFU said that they'd been in to speak to Keir Starmer recently, and that he was in listening mode. And you've got to remember, these changes don't come in until 2026, which means there are two budgets between now and then. So I think in the next budget, next year, I think Rachel Reeves will find some way of protecting genuine family farm while preventing people using the tax relief as a tax point.
And I think that's the point. You know, if in fact they tweaked it slightly, is similarly to the winter fuel allowance. If they tweaked it a bit, it would certainly, you know, take more people out of it who don't need to be in it, and they could still go after the people that they wanted to go after, you know, because I think everybody agrees on the pensioners' fuel allowance. There's no point in giving it to people who've got loads of money, so just take it off them, and then you don't have an argument. And they wouldn't object either, by the way, but taking it off everyone is a mistake, in the same way that the farming situation, again, if you're talking about, you know, people like Jeremy Clarkson, you know, making a fortune and not paying any tax, and that's why you want to change the rules, fine. But, you know, there are plenty of ordinary farmers, and many of them were in Westminster yesterday demonstrating, you know, whose only livelihood is the farm that they work, and they don't make a lot of money off it.
No, they made a terrible noise, though. It was almost impossible to work yesterday.
Oh, dear. Well, you said everybody should be in cities, so now you got your wish, you know, but they're all driving up and down the road in tractors.
So I said everybody should be in the city, and they came to the city.
Yeah.
In large numbers, and very noisy they were too.
Yeah.
But that's good. We should celebrate democracy and free speech.
We should. And nobody got arrested, and nobody waved any Palestinian flags, which is also nice. Let's talk about immigration, because Kerry Badenoch seems to think it's the top subject that she wants to attack Keir Starmer on, which I don't think is perhaps working out too well for her. Let's have a look at what she said yesterday.
4 years ago, the Prime Minister signed a letter demanding that foreign criminals be allowed to stay in Britain. Dozens of Labour and Liberal Democrat MPs repeatedly signed these letters, insisting that rapists and murderers be allowed to stay here. One of those criminals, Ernesto Elliott, had 17 convictions, including for knife crime. After his deportation was blocked, Elliott went on to murder someone. He was able to stay here and murder because people like this man campaigned against deporting criminals. Will he apologize for signing these letters?
Mr. Speaker, I'd firstly remind her that when we're in the number now, under their watch, of migrants coming to this country, nearly 1 million, is over 4 times the number when we're in the EU. They lost control of the borders. And the particular example she puts to me is an example of failure under her government to take the necessary measures to keep our country safe.
It's a rather curious line of attack, this, for her to take, isn't it? Considering that there are so many other possible lines of attack that she could take, like the economy, for example.
Or the winter fuel payment, which you've just explained, the line that she could take, which would be perfectly reasonable, and actually would cause mayhem on the Labour benches. I mean, the Labour MPs absolutely hate the winter fuel payment cut. Right. And she really ought to try to divide the Labour Party on that, because it's a winnable issue. That, as you say, I think it would be fairly straightforward for Rachel Reeves to solve that problem. And so instead, she decided to take leave of her senses and raise the one issue on which the Conservative government failed most shockingly and prominently, and ask Keir Starmer about that, and allow Keir Starmer an easy win at Prime Minister's questions.
Yeah. And also, he can start talking now about the things that Labour are doing. And we've got numbers here. I don't know if you've seen these, but Labour apparently successfully deported 37 people to Pakistan on Tuesday night on what Keir Starmer referred to as a record flight. Now, you know and I know it's not a very big number, but at least it's something. You know,
but
it's more people than got sent to Rwanda, that's for sure.
Well, that's right. I mean, and the level of removals overall is going back up again after having fallen to almost zero under the Conservatives. I mean, I think it's 7,000 or 8,000 people were actually removed in the year to September.
Yeah.
You know, the Labour government is pushing that figure back up again. Which means that Kemi Badenoch is just mistaken, I think, if she thinks that just simply raising this subject is going to win back those voters who've defected to Nigel Farage's outfit.
Yeah. Right.
It's not going to work, and Keir Starmer has a very easy comeback on that. I mean, she goes on about people writing letters, but she was a member of the government that looked at those letters and said, yeah, all right, they can stay.
But this is the problem with the Tories, isn't it? And this is the problem they're going to have from now until the end of time, because they messed up so badly in 14 years. They left the country in a hell of a state. I mean, funnily enough, the only thing that I think she could defend is the economy, because the one thing that's gone badly wrong since July has been the economy. And so they could defend that. But she doesn't seem to want to do that either. But we're going to talk to Zia Yusuf from Reform coming up in a little while later on in this hour. And it seems to me that all the momentum from the Tories has moved totally to Reform. You know, they've got Nick Candy now on board as their major donor. He's going to be their treasurer. And they've still got Elon Musk, who's just been declared to now be the richest man ever in the history of Christendom. £440 billion he's now got, apparently. So for him, it's like me giving you a tenner to give 100 million to Reform. You know, the whole...
Yeah, he's not allowed to, though.
Well, he'll find a way, though. All of these things can be done. He can easily feed it through Dale Vince or somebody like that and, you know, buy Dale Vince's company. You know, money can always be found. But the point is this, the Tories have got nowhere to go, have they? I mean, they just don't seem to have a clue.
Well, I think they've got yes, you're absolutely right. I think they've got... I'm sorry to agree with you again, Mike.
Goodness me, this is 3 out of 3.
I know. I mean, I think the betrayal of millions of voters who voted to leave the EU in order to reduce immigration, their sense of betrayal is so great that it will take... You're quite right. It will take years, if not decades, them to forgive the Conservative Party.
And is there a tipping point though as well? Because Theo Usherwood was here a minute ago, and he's saying if you know the Conservatives have got something like 130,000 members. If Reform go over that number fairly soon, they have more members than the Tories do. They have more ability to raise funds. They have more and better donors. You know, the Conservative Party are in danger of disappearing, aren't they?
Well, I'd be cautious about that. I mean, I think Nigel Farage has problems of his own, which is, you know, his views on the NHS, which he doesn't agree with the NHS, basically.
I've never heard him say he doesn't agree with the NHS. I've heard him say that the NHS is very inefficient, it doesn't work, which is true.
No, you should have been listening more carefully when he was on some of those 7-way debates in the election campaign. He basically...
No, I was listening. I've never heard him say he doesn't agree with the NHS. That's a mischaracterisation, I would say.
Well, he says it needs to be... I've forgotten his exact words, but it's
it needs to be reformed.
Remade from top to bottom or something.
Well, it does. It doesn't work.
Yeah,
what's wrong with that?
Well, you and I might agree with that, but the British people certainly don't. They don't want to hear a politician saying the NHS
is
terrible.
Well, you need to listen more carefully to what people say to us about the NHS.
And they certainly don't want to...
When you've got the NHS in West Midlands telling you to drive yourself to the hospital when you're having a heart attack, people do not like to hear that either.
Well, you're right. Maybe he's just ahead of his time, but I mean, I think he's too far.
I think he speaks as he does on a lot of things like ordinary people speak. You know, he knows that the NHS doesn't work, and the whole idea that even Labour, Wes Streeting even now agrees that, you know, you can't just walk around saying the NHS is like a national identity and a national religion and the thing that makes us proud is to be British. That might have been true a decade ago, but not anymore.
No, but West Streeting would still support the principle of a universal national service that's free at the point of
so
use.
does Nigel Farage.
And I don't think Nigel Farage actually believes in that. But
I think you're wrong.
that. But also he supports Donald Trump, which most British people don't. They regard Donald Trump as a danger.
That's not true either. I mean, plenty of British people don't like Donald Trump.
It's true, Mike.
Well, no, plenty of people don't like him. It doesn't matter. He's the President of the United States of America, or about to be. It doesn't matter whether people like him or not. And this is the problem with you talking only to people that live in cities, in high-rises. Because when you get out of the city, you meet people who actually think Donald Trump is going to save the planet and is going to take us away from all of this diversity, equity and inclusion.
Supporting Donald Trump is a minority activity in this country, Mike. I'm just saying that...
So is supporting the Labour Party, John. The Labour Party support is a minority practice in this country as well.
Not as much of a minority.
It's still a minority practice, you would agree. You would agree it's still a minority.
My point is that Nigel Farage is never, or at least is going to struggle to become an alternative to the Conservative Party, because there's a limit to his appeal among the British people.
Yes, I think that's why
very
it's
strongly.
interesting.
But I'd be very surprised. I mean, Richard Tice was talking about Reform hitting 30% in the opinion polls next year. That would be a remarkable achievement.
I think he's right. I think he's right. I think it will happen because there's something changing about the way that people are approaching politics now, and you know that, John, as well as I do. It's no longer the tribal. I'm either a Labour or a Tory voter anymore. People are voting on issues. People are voting on issues. People are voting on the economy. They're voting on how they feel about immigration, and whoever's going to do a better job for them is who they're going to vote for. That's what happened in the last election.
Yeah, and if those kind of voters want to split their votes between the Conservatives and Reform, then they will ensure that Labour will be in power come what may.
No, see, I think that's what happened when Reform were in infancy, and they got 5 members of Parliament into Westminster. But that will change at the next election because they will have a bigger organisation and they'll have more money.
Yeah, they might get 10.
And the Tories, let's not forget, the Tories have lost all credibility, as you just said, because they changed their party. They became less conservative. People don't want... I think that...
No, that's not...
If anybody's going to disappear...
That's absolutely not true, Mike.
It is true.
No, the only way...
Well, why don't you ask Robert Jenrick?
The only way that Nigel Farage is ever going to win in British politics is if he moves to the centre ground, because that's not true. That remains true. Oh, good, we disagree.
Yeah, finally.
You've got a Rentoul rumble going.
Finally.
No, you're talking rubbish, Mike. No. Elections are won in the centre ground.
People like Rory Stewart, right? People like Rory Stewart and you keep talking about the centre ground as if it's some kind of holy place to get to, right? But the centre ground for the Tory party did not win them the election. You know, Boris Johnson won a landslide.
Because they abandoned it, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but Boris Johnson won a landslide in 2019, not because he was a Conservative, but because he wanted to leave the European Union. And you will tell me that there's loads of people... No, he said, get Brexit done. That was the slogan.
Yes, and he also presented a manifesto, which was a new Labour manifesto, spending more on public services.
It wasn't. No,
police,
this is my point.
NHS and
it wasn't about that.
And that is the way you win elections.
It was a single-issue election. It was all about Brexit, get Brexit done. That's why he got the majority, and that's why Tories are so absolutely disillusioned, because they didn't get Brexit done properly. They didn't have a Conservative mandate after that, and they didn't do anything, frankly, in any way that was Conservative, and that's why they lost the support of the country. And so, therefore... The only way
getting Brexit done was a centrist project because, by definition, the median voter in 2016 voted to leave the European Union. So, you know, leaving the EU was a centrist thing to do, and to combine that with more spending on public services was the sweet spot in electoral politics, and that's why Boris Johnson won. And the reason but you've also accepted that he then made a complete mess of it.
Yes, but you've also accepted that it was in a single issue. It wasn't about whether or not it was a centrist party that got in. They got in because they were going to get Brexit done. And if you don't agree with me, we'll just agree to disagree. So thank you. Well, there we go. I'll take that as a win. John, listen, thank you for finally disagreeing with me. John Rentoul, Chief Political Commentator at The Independent. Let's get a voice note from Ivor on farmers.
I'd like to shove my combine harvester up Keir Starmer's. I think that Labour's farmers' policy is completely dumb. I've got 20 acres, but soon there will be none. So I'd like to shove my combine harvester up Keir Starmer's.
Well, I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. Thank you, Ivor. It's very creative. Slightly early for that sort of talk, but thank you very much indeed. You can see the farmers there in huge numbers, basically turning up in Westminster yesterday. Interestingly enough, John Rentoul thinks that Keir Starmer will actually fold on the farmers. I don't know if he will, but it would be sensible. It would be the more sensible thing to do.